So, this video is sort of a response to the responses that I've received on my Star Wars The Old Republic video. Now first off, I want to clear a couple things up. Number one, yes, I played the stupid game. There's been a lot of various changes to the game since its development. There's been a few betas, some that probably a lot of people posted on the forums don't even know about. So the classes have changed a lot over time. Yes, now the Inquisitors, they have the assassin spec that they can do, and they can shoot lightning bolts and hit with lightsabers and blah 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 blah. Right, I get it. But that wasn't always the case, and I would like to think that the feedback from people such as myself who point out the stupidity of a Sith class who does nothing but shoot lightning bolts at people has contributed to the changes that are coming to the classes. But still, honestly, the position of that class, there's still a ranged DPS, or anytime you look at anybody playing the class, it's really meant for ranged DPS. Just because you could spec and do a little bit more damage to your lightning with your lightsaber, excuse me, not your lightning, but your lightsaber, do a little more damage to your lightsaber, yes, okay, fine. But it's still primarily a ranged DPS class. You'll see when you play the damn game. Other thing people keep mentioning is like, they have to have healing classes. You have to have this healing class, the holy three, party roles of DPS and tank and a healer, a spot healer basically, so that they can sit there at their keyboard and dump heals on their people and buffs and so forth. And it's true that, at least right now, there's no reason for a person to basically just sit there spamming heal on somebody else while they're tanking. The game isn't quite at that level yet. I see it getting there. But for right now, it hasn't been that way. You can get away with a lot of crap without needing a dedicated healing class. But that's still going to happen. I still see that happening, and it's bad, and it's wrong, it doesn't need to be there. And this is why. This game could have been an opportunity for BioWare to show their ingenuity with game mechanics, which they have. They've demonstrated that in previous titles. Instead, they're going for the stereotypical DQ Mud rating system, and it's just not what we need. What they could have done is this. They could have made it so that every character class could change between three different party roles. Change between three different party roles whenever they wanted to. One of these roles could be a tanking role, one of these could be a DPS role, and the other one could be something maybe to help with restoration or healing or whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to be healing. I mean, what is life anyway for a character? Is it really the hit points? Is that reflecting chunks being taken out of your body? It doesn't have to be. It could be morale. It could be your courage. It could be your stamina. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that someone has to use the Force or some little med kit to heal you to recover life points. It could simply be a morale booster if your health is really a reflection of your fighting spirit. But let's just go back from this a bit and go back to what I was talking about before. Three party roles. So what you could have instead is, if it was a Jedi character, for example, you have one Jedi class, at least for a Jedi and one for a Sith. And what they do is they have divided the abilities of a stereotypical Jedi, a Force user really, between these three different builds. So you've got your DPS focus class on the Sith side, where they're really throwing the lightning bolts and all kinds of other crap at people, like maybe they're force choking people, for example, doing really force intensive, high damage attacks in their DPS spec. And then there's a tanking one where they're really more focused on the lightsabers. And not necessarily like soaking hits, but more like evading, maybe blocking, whatever. Let's not make it the tanking so that it's like World of Warcraft where the guy is just getting beat on, but more like City of Heroes where it's all about evasion. And the purpose is to increase your evasion level so that you don't get hit to begin with. That's really what City of Heroes is about. Anybody who's played that would know that it works. You don't have to have a guy who's always sitting there healing people, because people just get really high evasion and they have really high regeneration. And then you have your third class, not third class, but your third spec for a character. And this is more focused on maybe regenerating your health. Maybe it's for giving bonuses or boosts or some sort of buff, or maybe even debuffs to the enemy, and also with regenerating your own character stuff. So this is how it works, basically. So you've got your raid of Jedis, and somebody goes out there. He's in his tanking spec right now. He's in his tanking mode. So he goes out there and he tanks the boss, right? The other guys are in their DPS mode, so they're blasting with lightning bolts or force push or choke or whatever, throwing their lightsabers at them. So, and then you have the other guy who is sort of like in his regeneration mode. He's giving some buffs, some, maybe battle meditation or something. I don't know. It's the Force, right? Well, when the guy who's tanking, when he starts to get hurt, all he has to do is switch to the more passive mode. The one with the buffing, where he has less threat is going to be on him, and he's going to be regenerating his own stuff. Somebody else is going to switch to their tanking mode. He's going to like insult him. He's going to taunt the boss and take the threat, just dump it all onto him. He'll start tanking now. And basically what it'll have is it'll be a rotation of characters taking over the DPS duties, and rotation of characters taking over the tanking, and a rotation of characters who are buffing and regenerating their own health while they're buffing their party members, so that they can go back in there and start tanking again once the other guy is starting to get low. See, that is right now something I just made up off the top of my head, and that could have been more Star Warsy than this Dungeons and Dragons, DQ Mud, World of Warcraft, EverQuest-ish type of system that they have right now with classes. I mean, it just doesn't feel like Star Wars to me. It honestly doesn't. I don't buy this, the Sith warrior is Darth Vader. Darth Vader's like that because Darth Vader is missing most of his body. He's a robot. He doesn't have the ability to do a whole bunch of crazy Force Sith stuff like every other Sith character really can. He's mostly fighting like that because he's a freaking machine. And it just doesn't seem, it just doesn't feel right to me. Especially if you played the other Knights of the Old Republic games, where you had so much flexibility with your character. Or you played the role-playing games, for example, the tabletop games, which are really what the Knights of the Old Republic is based off of, the systems. The Dungeons & Dragons 3.5, not so much the West Coast games, but the Dungeons & Dragons version of Star Wars. So if you played that, there was so much flexibility. And it really would have been a lot better. And I know I'm really focusing on the Jedi, for example. The Jedi really are the coolest class, in my opinion. I mean, you could still do something like this with like bounty hunters. It doesn't really seem. I don't know why there's bounty hunters. It's just in the soldier class. But the bounty hunters, for example, or the agents, they still could have had a 3 specs, because all you really have here is you've got a tanking class, which is mostly about evading anyway, and then it's about DPS, so it's using guns, using bombs, using swords, lightsaber swords to do DPS. And then there's a class whose job is to give morale boosts to the rest. I keep saying class, but it's not really a class. It's a spec, it's a trait that you could switch through easy whenever you want to. So just, I guess a good way to say is like the Death Knight in World of Warcraft, where they have the Frost and the Blood and the Unholy spec that they can just switch between for the auras. It'd be just like that. And every class would be able to do it and switch between 3 different modes whenever they want. That would be way more Star Warsy to me. That's my honest opinion. I don't like the way that the Old Republic is working right now. I just don't. And if you think that it does, that's great. I don't. And it's a big one for me. It just does not feel like Star Wars. I mean, you can put the graphics out there and you can have all the flavor text, but it just doesn't play like Star Wars, in my mind, should play. So, this has been a bit of a rant, but I hope that you got something meaningful out of this. Thanks. And feel free to blast my comment box with whatever you want to say about me and my opinions and how I talk and whatever else. I enjoy reading it. Thanks.